Hello, everyone. Welcome to Decoding Downtowns, brought to you by Vistity. In this podcast, we dive deep with leaders from business improvement districts across the nation, revealing the strategies that are shaping the future of urban development and economic growth. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, it's Jamie Schwartzman, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're going to be speaking with Rocky Schneider. He's the executive director of the Downtown Community Partnership and the Downtown Fargo Business Improvement District, both in Fargo, North Dakota. Rocky, welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Jamie, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Great. Well, tell me a little bit about downtown Fargo and what it's like there.
You know, downtown Fargo is probably not dissimilar to a lot of downtowns. We're a small community that has kind of our first major downtown area has become an urban area, and we're going through all the learning processes along with that. You know, we boomed in the kind of early mid-century, and then it kind of went away to the mall era, and now we're back into a thriving downtown and just loving it.
Tell me about sort of its position and what it's known for.
In the city of Fargo, it's really the one of the biggest metro areas in the region. When you think about miles, we're about 3 miles from Minneapolis, or three hours from Minneapolis on the interstate. Going to the west, I mean, you're a whole state. You can drive a whole day before you get to another metro area that's as big as Fargo. And so while Fargo doesn't pop in a lot of people's imaginations, for a large swath of the country, you know, we're on the intersection of two interstates, and so this is the metro area for a lot of the country.
And tell us a little bit about, the organization, how you're structured and how you're financed.
Yeah, so we have two organizations underneath my umbrella here. One is the Downtown Community Partnership, which, is made up of member revenues, investors, some events that we do. And then we also have the Business Improvement District, which is a taxpayer-funded business entity that, goes through the city, and then we take it in through collections that way.
And so how do those two organizations work together?
Yeah, I think it ends up being a really good relationship. We have a lot of, if we were separate, you could see a lot of overlap in what we do. We're both sort of into beautifying and celebrating downtown. And so it really makes sense to have us both under one roof. One is taxpayer funded, or businesses funded through taxes. And so we're pretty cautious with what we do. And then on the marketing side, sort of the Chamber of Commerce, economic development side of things, we have a little more freedom to go out and do other things.
And so as executive director, what is your role? What keeps you busy?
Yeah, it's whatever fire pops up that day, right? It's fun being downtown because you can walk from one meeting to the next, and all of a sudden you're changing issues completely because you run into something. So, but it's fun. I think what I like to do is celebrate our downtown, and that can be anything from welcoming new businesses, from working large events, or just meeting with people coming in from the area, want to find out more about Fargo.
And so a little bit about you. Tell us about your story and how you got into this work.
Yeah, I was born and raised in downtown Fargo, and in the 80s, my parents worked downtown, and there was nothing to do. You didn't stay there after 5 o'clock. There was nothing for kids to do, nothing for teens to do. There was a couple bars. So I moved away. I went to school in Minneapolis and didn't plan on coming back. And while I was gone, there's a couple things that happened. Some tax incentives happened, some new investment happened. And as I came back during college type thing, I'm like, okay, I might give this a chance. And I came back and I spent about 17 years doing public infrastructure, building coalitions and building big projects. So it's kind of the other side of community building. But in that same time period, I also involved in the Planning and Zoning Commission in the city of Fargo for about 11 years. And this job opened up to kind of promote my home and build, use the networks that I've had. I'm the first local hire ever for my position.
How long have you been in the role?
Yeah, so I've been here just under a year. I was hired at the beginning of last October. So it's still fresh. I can still make excuses that I'm the new guy, but it's been fun too.
Got it. Have you made changes, and have you starting to affect any difference?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in the model that you can move at the speed of trust. And my background has built a lot of coalitions with local governments around here. And so I have a lot of trust in working with staff and government officials. And so I think we've been given a unique seat at the table at a lot of those city meetings. So I've been driving the public policy realm, which was really the goal of our board. We've always kind of been an event organization and had very successful events and some marketing of downtown tourism type things. I'm trying to push the envelope a little more into the public policy.
Well, let's talk about some of those policies. As you know, what's happening right now, and what are some of the changes that you see occurring?
Yeah, the nice part about Fargo is you probably don't realize it's one of the most, we've been economic resilient forever. I think we have 16 consecutive decades of growth. If you were to type in, X equals Y in a graph and you see that sort of straight, angled up, that's been our growth. We've had no dips, no, peaks. We've been pretty consistent, but what we're running up against to now is we've had major flooding. So we just finished a $3 billion flood protection project that I was heavily involved with. So now we're sort of landlocked. You think we have plenty of room up here in the Great Plains, but we've been realizing this for a while. And so we started to focus more on infill and growing, downtown, growing our core neighborhoods, revitalizing those. So looking into the future, we're trying to figure out how to do that even more, become more dense, more urban. So it falls right into line with what we're trying to do downtown.
What are the policies that are supporting that?
Yeah, a lot of it, you look at nothing that everybody else isn't dealing with, single family zoning, trying to, have by right development that allows you to increase density, promote housing that's denser, mixed use developments, all those type of things. I think as we look at turn of the century properties that are 100 years old that probably have reached their life, how do we build those back better than they were?
What are some of the challenges? Let's talk about what some of the things you're facing right now and what you're trying to overcome.
Yeah, I think you look at the picture behind you, right? We're known for our winters, right? That and our wood chippers, if you watch Fargo. But so stay away from wood chippers. But the winter is tough. I mean, we make us resilient up here too, and hardy folk, as we say. But it's when you come up in January for an economic development visit, you might have a totally different impression than the rest of the year. I think what we try to teach people is we appreciate all the seasons, and there's something different to do in each season. But I think we're always going to have that challenge, and so we're trying to make winter more fun. We've kind of embraced it. Some winters are better than others, but other than that, and challenges, same thing everybody else. Evictions are up across the board. We have kind of post-COVID relapse of a lot of the programs, and so we've seen an increased number of homelessness that's created some problems. I don't think it's as extreme as a lot of other downtowns, but we're facing the same challenges. So there's this perception of downtown, I think, that has been challenged through the COVID years that we're trying to combat a little bit.
And so on the flip side, what's working and what can you suggest maybe to others of some of the programs that you've tested out that are working well?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best thing is that there are so many different people trying to operate under this same umbrella of providing like a vibrant downtown or a safe downtown. And what I found when I took this position is that there was a lot of groups doing it independently of each other. And so I felt like our role as a downtown organization is to bring people to the same table and figure out where the overlaps and gaps are. So we're not wasting funding, we're not wasting effort, and we can kind of build off the success of everybody else. And that's our business improvement district, and our social services, our police, the other event organizations in town. We're all doing this. And so if we can work together a little bit more, the parking ramp organizations that have different parking ramps, park districts, we're all offering this type of safety and vibrancy, placemaking type efforts. Let's work together on this.
All right. And do you conduct meetings or try to bring people together to make that happen?
Yeah, we have a regular downtown safety meeting, as we call it, and it's really bringing the faces together. So when we see each other on the street, we're all backing each other up. We know when a police get called to an incident or something, that's going to be at least two people and some cars and everything else. That means everywhere else in downtown is probably less patrol, right? And so it's like, if we can all be eyes and ears on that. And sometimes the police get to a situation and realize that's not a police issue. That's a cleanliness issue or a social services issue. We're trying not to all duplicate. There's nothing I hate seeing more when you go to a thing and it's like you have every first responder, every service all lined up. It's like, we can be more efficient than that.
How often do you do those meetings?
So those are once a month. And then we have some meetings in between. We've started a downtown task force meeting, which is really our organization along with every sort of department director at the city of Fargo. So on an operational level, we're all functioning outside of our silos. And so trying to work together. And that's everything from what public art can do for safety, activating spaces, lighting, with public works. So I mean, I think just understanding what everybody else does to contribute to that realm.
Great, great. Let's shift a little bit and just talk about data and economic development data and what you guys are tracking. And of the data that you're tracking, what do you think is the most valuable for investors, developers, and stakeholders?
Yeah, I think one of the best things we have, well, we have like a 2% unemployment, right? So everybody works here and there's lots of jobs. I think what we're trying to figure out is where people are coming from and where to advertise to for our workforce. I know that's one of the things we use Placer AI, which is not uncommon these days. Trying to really figure out when people come here, where do they go? And so we can enhance those areas. I think, being from a state where we've offered a lot of tax incentives over the years, and a lot of brochures still highlight tax incentives. I think one of the things we're trying to track is the quality of life aspects of that. How close are you to parks or recreation items so I think a lot of things that Placer does is it shows where the services are for grocery stores, for restaurants, and those sort of things. And I think that's what I'm trying to show of our downtown. I love our downtown because we don't have a McDonald's or a Subway or a Starbucks. I mean, everything you see is a local business. And so we have great food, great coffee shops, all those things that every downtown has, but we don't have chains. And so it's unique, but I think it's something we try to highlight too. But as far as the data side of that, I think trying to figure out, the value of pedestrian data. And so we have a lot of pedestrian trackers, and Placer's really good at that as well, because it's unique in our city. It's a very large city for the population size. And so we have a lot of miles of road. And so trying to teach, our elected officials and others the value of density and the pedestrian traffic, especially with the winter season, you see outdoor recreation go down, right? In the winter. In downtown, it doesn't. And so trying to use the pedestrian data that people are still outside, and that's a good thing, and what value that brings.
Well, listen, it's July 2024. So I wonder if you can give me sort of your perspective on what's happening. What are the trends right now in retail vacancy? Are you facing office challenges in vacancy? Are prices holding strong? Give me a sense of what the market looks like.
Yeah, our biggest challenge here is housing. We have a housing cost issue that's becoming more of an issue, but we don't have a housing supply. We have a growth plan and housing study that just came out recently that we got to have like 15,000 units in the next, I don't know, or however many years, and it's really going to be a challenge. And it's really putting sort of downward pressure on everybody down. And so what we've seen is a lot of infill. So even the picture behind you right now, it's like right where your head is now 140 unit apartment complex right there. And so we haven't had a lot of like office conversions. We have vacant office space, that comes and goes, but we haven't seen that mass conversion. I think a lot of what we're seeing is we still have enough vacant area that can be turned into it. We have a $60 million theater and apartment complex coming downtown. And so I think what we're seeing is activating all the areas that maybe have been torn down over the years or still a parking lot. And so we're not in the phase where we have to have buildings converted, which makes us a little bit different.
How does the pipeline look for new residential construction?
It's pretty good. I think there's a couple challenges we have. We've had a lot of buyouts along the river for flood protection, and some of those areas have been challenging to redevelop because they're old industry spots along the river. And so EPA, funding's probably needed to clean up those areas. So some of that creates a challenge, but I think for most of the efforts, we're pretty good. I think what we're trying to do is convince funders to come, investors, right? And we've been pretty good at that. We've had some good local money, but I think that's one of our focus nationally is putting Fargo on the map and realizing we've been pretty consistent and pretty successful. We're not in a boom period, but if people are looking now for a consistent investment option, then Fargo's a pretty good place.
And what are you doing to tell that story?
I think we have our best example is we have the second largest Microsoft campus in the country, which makes us fairly unique. And this really came about because a guy named Doug Burgum, who's our governor now, and he's been on a lot of national news outlets lately. He started a software company here and ended up selling it to Microsoft for $1 billion, and then convinced them to come to Fargo and really told that story. And I think they've been here now for probably 20 years or something like that. And I think pointing to that, showing that success, I think showing the data through the housing bust and the 2008 sort of crash and financial crisis through COVID, our growth hasn't changed a whole lot. We have a pretty diverse economy. If you look at like the diversification index, we're about 50% range for population of major metro areas, but our diversification's in like the top, I think 20%. And so, we're resilient here. And so telling the stories of other businesses that have come in and had success, I think is really the best narrative. You can point to data all day, and data, you can kind of show whatever you want, but when you can point to companies that everybody knows, the John Deere's, the Microsofts, tell that story, I think it shows a lot. If I could go one other sort of neat thing, there's a building right behind you too that just got $100 million renovation because the bank moved its headquarters from a much larger metro area back to Fargo, and said, this is where we want to be. We had some issues in other cities, and this is the community we want. It's manageable size, but still big. And so it's fun to see that investment back into a community.
So let's talk just a little bit about data, dashboards, visualization of those things. Where do you see that heading in sort of playing a role in achieving your objectives?
Yeah, I think one of the things we're working on right now with that is we're trying to get a convention center. It's one of the things Fargo lacks. And we're also just broke ground yesterday on a major expansion of our airport, Hector International Airport. I think both are good signs. And what we're trying to track between both of those is, what we're losing out on. I think is probably the most valuable data we have locally is how do we keep this growth going? And so we're looking at our neighboring communities, Sioux Falls and others that get these conferences, have the airports and those sort of things to show what value it is to a community. We haven't ever been afraid to tax ourselves when we need to for public investment. And so we have a tax coming up for our convention center that we're looking at, and we're trying to show the data that everybody that comes into town provides so much funding. They all stay somewhere, lodge, they eat, they buy things. And so I think we're tracking all that through our sales tax revenue. I think is one of our best, it's not made up data, but it's pretty real. And so, it's not, even Placer has its variances, but when you actually get down to real economic sales and use taxes, I think that's the best thing we have.
So that's a great long-term vision. Let's talk a little bit about the short term and what you see happening in the next 1 year.
Yeah, the next 1 year, I think our housing growth downtown, it's become a neighborhood for the first time. And that's been different. We don't have a dark period. I kind of say, downtown goes through a bunch of different hours of the day. It can completely change, as you know, and for a long time, Fargo, 5 o'clock came and gone, and you have sort of strange old fashioned downtowners. Now we have, I think it's over half the units downtown have families in them, and so I think we're becoming more focused on that. I think our been working with our park district to try to figure out what's an urban park, which is something we haven't had to explore before. So we're looking at public-private partnerships of a cool space that's behind me, Broadway Square, trying to show how that works. And I think one of the data we're trying to show is it's very expensive to have a park in downtown, but doesn't need to look like every other park. It doesn't need to be a wide expanse of green space. It can be just a place where people can come and sit and read or take a bite to eat from a local place. We have a little splash pad. It doesn't have to be a big swimming pool, all these types of things. And so trying to track, what I like to do is compare downtown to a suburban area. And so that's most of the comparisons I do.
What kind of people are moving downtown? And can you give me a sense of that?
Yeah, we have 20-some thousand college students in the area. And so, you have that good mix. I love having a college community. We're not solely reliant on it, but it obviously brings a necessary workforce in the service industry, but it also brings a level of culture for theater and sports and everything else that comes along with that, artists. And so I think that's a great mix, but we also have then the academic world of the professors and those types that come in and mix. And so what I think is the best selling point, as I've been on a lot of hiring committees for different things, is we're places that spouses want to come as well. I think you see a lot of metro areas that aren't as diverse. Well, they'll come because it's a university city or it's a financial hub or an egg hub, an agriculture hub. And then their spouse goes, well, what am I supposed to do there? And they end up taking some other type of job. What we see as spouses come here, they can find equally good jobs and really across the spectrum of work, which is different.
Great, great. Hey, let's play make believe for a second and pretend that I've handed you a magic wand and you now have learned the spells to be able to cast a spell and promote the vitality of downtown Fargo. What would you use your wand for?
That's the perfect question because the background that I'm looking at on here too, it's this beautiful downtown, but there's this huge blotch that's this dark, and it's our river, the Red River of the North. It's one of two rivers in the world that flows north. It's kind of the bane of our existence too because it floods. We're very flat. As you can see, there's no elevation in Fargo, and we built this amazing flood protection project that has amazing bike paths, but we do nothing along the river currently. And right across the river is the state of Minnesota, beautiful state. We all go there for the weekends, the lake cabins and things. City of Moorhead is doing a lot to activate too, but we do nothing as a joint community along the river. And I'm so jealous of other downtowns that the river is the highlight. I mean, that's where the river walks are. That's where people want to be. It's lit up. It's passive activities all over there. There's commerce along the river. And I think that's just what we're missing in Fargo. I think it's always been the scary thing in our area because it floods, and so it's not a recreation river either. And so it's one of those things we've kind of just avoided and turned a blind eye to. But I think we can learn from a lot of other places on the cool things that can come with activating river space.
Yeah, great vision. Hey, before we wrap up, Rocky, can you tell our listeners how they can keep in touch with you and keep an eye on what's going on in downtown Fargo?
Absolutely. Downtownfargo.com or on any social media platform, you type in downtown Fargo, that's us. And we're here. Reach out to us. We communicate with everybody, and so feel free to reach out to us, and we'll give you a shout back, and we'll invite you to town, and I'll show you around.
Sounds great. Hey, thank you so much for joining us today, Rocky. And your insights are so interesting. I'm really looking forward to seeing how things unfold in downtown Fargo, and I think maybe I'll take you up on that. I need to come up there and check it out and maybe experience some winter.
Perfect.
Hey, and to our listeners, thanks so much for tuning in again to Decoding Downtowns. I'd also like to thank Vistity for sponsoring the podcast. Until next time, keep exploring and innovating in your districts.
Thank you for joining us today for Decoding Downtowns. If you've enjoyed our podcast, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's brought to you by Vistity, the leading geospatial visualization platform for data-driven decisions. Stay connected, stay informed, and let's continue to shape the future of our cities together. Until next time, I'm Jamie Schwartzman.